The rain streaked across the glass walls of the 85th floor penthouse, as New York glowed beneath it in a restless sea of lights and noise and ambition, and Elliot Drake stood at the head of the conference table with the cold precision of a man who had forgotten what softness felt like and who no longer believed softness had any use in his world. He was 36, the billionaire founder of a tech empire known for innovation and ruthless efficiency, and beside him screens flickered with projections and contracts and timelines that defined the next $1 billion in company value. The room was full of executives in tailored suits, murmuring approval and agreement, as Elliot dissected a proposal with the detached sharpness of a surgeon. No one noticed Lena Hart at first. She moved quietly through the polished marble floor, wearing the simple uniform of a housekeeper, dark hair pulled back neatly, hands steady despite the weight of exhaustion she carried from working 3 jobs to survive. She set down a tray of coffee and water and reached to pick up a folder someone had placed on the wrong table, and in that moment, an architect interrupted Elliot, asking for the design blueprint, and the blueprint was the document Lena now held. Before she knew what was happening, every gaze in the room snapped toward her. Elliot turned with the controlled fury of a man who did not allow mistakes inside his kingdom, and his eyes locked on her like she was an error code waiting to be deleted. "Bring that here," he said, and Lena obeyed, placing the blueprint on the table, but one corner had bent under her fingers, and to Elliot, it looked like carelessness, disrespect, intrusion into a world she did not belong to. His voice cut through the room, harsh and clean. "Do you understand what this is worth? That sheet holds 2 years of confidential work, and you stroll in touching it like a napkin." The executives watched with the hungry stillness of predators sensing blood. Lena felt humiliation rise hot against her throat, but she kept her chin level and her breathing steady. "I only moved it because it was out of place, sir," she said, her voice quiet but even. Elliot laughed without warmth. "You speak as if your intentions matter. People like you do not get to have intentions. You follow orders. You do not question. You do not think." The room shifted. Someone smirked. Someone whispered. Someone recorded on a phone half hidden under a portfolio. Elliot stepped closer and delivered the sentence that would brand itself onto every face watching. "I can hire 10 like you." The words slapped the air with the arrogance of a man who believed himself untouchable, and Lena stood still absorbing them, not because they were new, but because he had spoken them with such cold certainty that for a heartbeat she felt smaller than the floor that held her weight. Yet then, something inside her settled, not in defeat but in clarity. She lifted her gaze until her eyes met his. "Then do it," she said simply. "You already lost the one person your money cannot buy." A hush fell so sharp it felt physical. For one impossible second, Elliot froze, not outwardly but inside his eyes. A flicker broke through a tiny crack in the armor, a micro-expression of disbelief, then panic, then something like fear before he forced it back under control. But Lena had seen it. Everyone had. She placed her employee badge on the table, the small clink echoing louder than Elliot expected, and she turned away, walking out between suits and polished shoes, and lifted eyebrows as if carving her own path through a world that had never intended to make space for her. Social humiliation wrapped around her, but she did not bow under it, and that resistance pierced Elliot more deeply than any insult she could have spoken. He watched her leave, unable to form words for the first time in years, unable to command, unable to control, unable to undo what he had just broken with his own hands. Lena stepped into the private elevator, her reflection faint in the mirrored door, and as the doors slid shut, her heart trembled, but her posture did not. Above the city, the conference room remained silent. Elliot stood rooted to the floor, jaw tight, fists shaking in barely contained emotion that no one in the room dared acknowledge. His breath left him uneven. His fingers curled until the knuckles whitened. A man who built an empire on unshakable logic, now shaken by a housekeeper who refused to be diminished. The screen behind him flickered with charts and numbers, but for the first time in years Elliot Drake could not focus. He could still hear her voice, the unwavering truth of it, the accusation he had earned. "You already lost the one person your money cannot buy." Something in him cracked, and he felt it, and the executives felt it too, though none would dare say it aloud. He turned away from them, from the blueprint, from the illusion of control, and the last thing he saw before the elevator doors closed around Lena was the imprint of her dignity carved into the air like a truth he could not escape. The penthouse was quiet in the way only extreme wealth could produce, a silence so wide it felt like distance made into architecture. And when Elliot Drake stepped inside, that silence rose to meet him like a wall pressing against his chest. New York roared beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but none of it reached him. He closed the door and leaned back against it, letting the weight of the morning crash into him with a force he had not been built to withstand. He had always known how to destroy competitors, crush negotiations, dismantle entire departments with a single directive, yet he had never learned how to manage the feeling, now crawling up his spine, the echo of Lena Hart's voice telling him a truth he had never expected to hear. You already lost the one person your money cannot buy. As if summoned by those words, a wave of memory surged, the sound of breaking glass from a different year, the echo of a younger Elliot standing in a different penthouse watching his mother disappear into the cold stillness of her bedroom, with a sadness he did not understand. Trauma had a way of rearranging a life, until every choice afterward resembled self-defense disguised as discipline, and Elliot had lived his adulthood constructing barriers that resembled success. The more he built, the less he felt. Tonight, though, the barrier faltered. A framed award rested on the marble console near the door. He brushed against it unintentionally, and the frame tipped, failing to catch the edge and shattering against the floor. The crash rang through the empty penthouse, sharp and glassy, and something inside him followed the same breaking pattern. He sank to his knees, hands braced on the cold marble, breath shaking. He tried to inhale and instead drew in fragments of guilt and fear, and a loneliness so profound it hollowed him out. He saw Lena again, not the uniform, not the quiet compliance, not the woman moving through his world as if trying to take up less space, but the moment she lifted her chin and met his cruelty with truth, it had stunned him, because no one looked at him that way. No one ever told him no. No one ever called out the emptiness behind his power. But she had, and he had not been ready. His phone buzzed on the countertop, dragging him from the dizzy blur in his head. The screen showed a message from HR marked urgent. He forced himself to stand, forced his breathing back into something almost steady, forced his voice into neutrality when he answered the call. A trembling voice on the other end spoke. "Sir, we have a situation with Theo." The words hit him with a jolt. His son, the one person he truly loved, the one piece of his life untouched by corporate ruthlessness, the child who did not speak easily, did not trust easily, did not attach easily. "What about him?" Elliot asked, gripping the counter. "He is refusing to eat. He is in shutdown mode. We tried everything, but nothing is working. He keeps drawing her." Elliot closed his eyes. "Who?" After a beat, the voice whispered. "The housekeeper, sir, Lena." A wave of realization washed over him, because of course it was her. She was the only person Theo had allowed near his world in months. Something about her steadiness, her warmth, her quiet presence reached the boy in a way no therapist or specialist had been able to. She had become part of the small, fragile structure that held Theo's world together. And Elliot had destroyed that stability in front of everyone, including his son, who had been watching from the hallway during the meeting, though Elliot had not known. His chest tightened. "Is he safe?" Elliot asked. "For now, yes, but he has not spoken a word since this morning. He will not come out of his room. He will not let anyone touch him." Elliot felt a sharpness in his lungs, like each breath carried shards of regret. "I will be there soon." He ended the call and pressed both hands to the counter, ducking his head. He did not know how long he stayed that way, but at some point another message came through from somebody on the executive floor. A casual text with a link to a trending video. He tapped it open. The grainy clip showed him in the conference room earlier that day, standing like a monument to arrogance, while Lena stood before him, the tiny tremor in her voice, the unwavering dignity the moment she laid down. Her badge looked less like resignation and more like liberation. Beneath the video, comments flooded in. "CEO humiliates housekeeper. Power trip caught on camera. This man needs therapy. Fire him." A storm was brewing, and Elliot's name sat in the center of it like a curse. He watched the playback again, and this time his eyes did not lock on his own anger or his own foolishness, but on the way Lena swallowed her pride without letting it kill her voice. He had thought power made him untouchable. Instead, it made him monstrous. He wandered through the penthouse in a daze, passing the immaculate kitchen, the empty dining table, the shadowed hallway lined with photographs he never looked at. He paused at a frame containing the only picture of Theo smiling. Lena had taken that photo 2 months earlier, after coaxing the boy into a sensory-safe game that made him giggle. He stared at the photo as grief pressed down on him. "I hurt him," he whispered. The confession hung in the dark air. "I hurt him, and I hurt her." His phone rang again, this time a direct call from the chief operating officer. Elliot answered with a brittle tone. "What?" The COO hesitated, then delivered the verdict. "The board wants a meeting first thing in the morning." Your behavior today sparked internal concerns and the video is circulating. There are murmurs about leadership stability. Elliot closed his eyes. Of course there are. Fix your PR disaster or step down. Those words were not spoken aloud, but they were so clearly implied that Elliot felt them, as if someone had leaned into his ear. The COO added softly, "For what it is worth, she was good for him. For Theo, I mean. For you too, maybe, though I doubt you will admit it." The call ended. Silence again. Silence so thick it felt like drowning. Elliot moved to Theo's room and opened the door slowly. The boy sat, curled in the corner, clutching a crumpled sheet of paper. His small shoulders shook in a rhythm of distress Elliot had not seen in months. The paper slipped. Elliot picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a drawing of Lena. Simple lines, soft colors, the closest thing to affection Theo could express. Elliot sank to the floor. "I broke something I did not know how to fix," he whispered. For the second time that night, tears blurred his vision. He did not try to stop them. He no longer knew how. The subway screeched into the Queen's station with a metallic grind as Lena Hart stepped onto the platform, gripping her worn canvas bag and pulling her jacket tighter against the cold draft swirling through the tunnel. New York always felt louder when a person returned defeated, and though she held her chin high, the humiliation from earlier clung to her like city grime refusing to wash off. The moment she reached street level, the reality of her world flattened her again. Her neighborhood stood in stark contrast to the mirrored skyscraper, where Elliot Drake ruled like a distant god. Here the sidewalks cracked. The corner deli flickered with a buzzing fluorescent light. Kids shouted from stoops while an elderly man pushed a shopping cart filled with cans past a shuttered laundromat. This was the America she knew, the America that rarely made headlines, the America where you survived by working until your bones ached, and your pride had to be small enough to fit inside your pocket. Her phone buzzed with a reminder. Rent overdue. The message from her landlord, Mr. Ferris, came with its usual threat, covered in forced politeness. "Lena, I need the payment by Friday, or I will have to reconsider the lease agreement." Reconsider the lease agreement was Queen's code for "I am raising your rent," or "someone else is getting this apartment." She closed the message without replying, and headed up the cracked stairwell to the small 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her 17-year-old brother Mason. Inside, the lights were dim, and the heating barely worked, but it smelled like tomato soup and resilience. Mason sat at the kitchen counter, textbooks spread across the chipped surface. He looked up the moment she walked in. "Hey sis, you home early?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, something like that." Mason studied her face with the quiet intuition of someone who had spent his whole life watching the world bruise his sister. "What happened?" Lena considered lying, but she had never lied to him. "I quit. Or maybe I was fired. It is complicated." Mason blinked. "The billionaire job. The one that paid real money." Lena nodded slowly, and Mason set his pencil down, the way a person might set down something fragile. "Did he do something to you?" "No. Just words. Harsh ones. The kind that feel like someone ripping the floor out from under you." Mason exhaled. He knew that tone. He knew the history behind it, the years of people dismissing them because they were poor, or because their father had left, or because their mother had died too soon, or because life liked to kick those who were already down. "Miss Ferris stopped by," he said quietly. "Wants the rent early this month." Lena closed her eyes. "Of course he does. And there is something else." Mason pushed a hospital envelope across the counter. The test results came back. "I need the surgery sooner than they thought." Her heart clenched. The cardiologist had warned them that time was running out, but they had hoped to wait until insurance coverage stabilized. "How much?" she whispered. Mason swallowed. 27,000 up front. Another 9 after. A hollow ache spread through her chest. She wanted to scream, wanted to punch a wall, wanted to hurl something heavy into the sky, and demanded explain why some people drowned while others floated. Instead, she reached out and squeezed her brother's hand. "We will figure it out. We always do." Mason gave her a shaky smile, trying to be brave for her, though he was the one who needed protecting. After a quiet moment, he attempted to lighten the air. "Did that little boy ever say anything today?" "Theo," she asked. "The gentle one. The one who trusted her enough to hold her hand during sensory overloads." She pictured his small face and her shoulders softened. "He did not speak, but he drew things. Sometimes, he drew me." Mason smiled. "Maybe he likes you. Maybe," she said softly, though her chest tightened again. The memory of the way Elliot had looked at her that morning, the coldness, the disdain, the humiliation echoed bitterly. She grabbed her apron and headed back out because rent and surgeries did not care about broken pride. Her second job waited at a 24-hour diner, 3 blocks away where the metal counters gleamed, but the floors smelled faintly of grease. The neon sign flickered above the window, advertising cheap coffee and cheaper hope. Lena tied her apron and stepped behind the counter, just as the dinner rush surged with truck drivers, exhausted nurses, and drunk patrons spilling in from late-night bars. The diner hummed with noisy American survival. Within minutes she had coffee splashed on her sleeve, and a man at the bar began slurring compliments that were not compliments at all. "You look too pretty to be working in a dump like this, sweetheart." His breath reeked of whiskey. Lena kept her tone even. "Sir, what can I get you to drink?" "What I want is your number." Lena ignored the comment, but he leaned closer, grabbing her wrist. "Come on, I am being nice." Before she could respond, a coworker intervened and pried the man's hand off with a tight warning. The man backed away, cursing loud enough to draw stares. Someone filmed the interaction. Of course they did. In this country, humiliation was entertainment. Lena forced herself to breathe through the sting crawling under her skin. She had survived worse. She always did. Hours passed until her feet throbbed and her back ached, but she pushed through because the world did not pause for dignity when bills piled up. When her shift finally ended, she stepped outside where the air smelled of rain-soaked pavement. She walked home slowly, arms wrapped around herself. Lights from passing cars reflected in her eyes, and every reflection reminded her of the penthouse she had just walked away from. She should have regretted it. Maybe anyone else would have. But Lena had learned something about herself long ago. Pride did not pay rent, but it helped a person breathe, and breathing mattered. Her phone buzzed again. A new notification. Trending video. She tapped it open and felt her stomach drop. Someone had uploaded the footage of Elliot humiliating her. Millions of views. Comments filled with debates about power and class and ethics in the American workplace. Some people defended her. Others mocked her. One comment read, "She should have kept her mouth shut." Another said, "She walked out like a queen." A third wrote, "That billionaire is dead inside." She stopped scrolling. She refused to let strangers rewrite her story when she was still living it. She lifted her gaze toward the skyline, where Elliot Drake lived far above everything human. She did not hate him. She wished she did. Hatred was heavy but simple. This was something more complicated, a mixture of disappointment, sorrow, and a ghost of something unfamiliar pulling at her chest. She shook it off. Her world was here in Queens, where walls were thin, neighbors were loud, and life was measured by how long you could keep going. She climbed the stairs, returned to her apartment, and found Mason asleep at the table over his homework. She draped a blanket over his shoulders and whispered to herself in the quiet, "No matter what happens, we will survive. We always do." Far across the city, a boy who rarely spoke curled in a corner clutching a drawing of her. But Lena did not know that yet, and tonight, she slept without realizing the storm her departure had set into motion. The morning light filtered through the penthouse in thin, pale stripes, softening nothing because the air inside was too tense, too brittle to let warmth settle anywhere. Elliot Drake stood outside his son's bedroom door with the stiffness of a man preparing to open a wound that had never fully healed. He knocked once softly. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. The third knock trembled as it left his knuckles. "Theo. It is Dad. I am coming in." He pushed the door open gently. The room was dim, the curtains half drawn, the nightlight glowing with a soft blue hue, meant to keep the space calming, but today it only cast shadows across the walls, where dozens of drawings had been taped in careful rows. Every drawing was of the same girl, brown hair, soft smile, steady hands. Lena. In the corner of the room, Theo sat, curled tightly, knees pressed to his chest, arms wrapped around them, face buried so deeply he looked as if he were trying to disappear into himself. His breathing came in shallow tremors. The therapist called this shutdown mode. It was the point where the child was overloaded enough that the world became too loud, too bright, too unpredictable to process, and so the mind folded inward like a shield. Elliot approached slowly, crouching to one knee a few feet away. "Theo buddy," he whispered, voice cracking despite his effort to steady it. "Look at me." His son did not move. Elliot noticed the broken crayon on the floor, the unfinished drawing, the trembling that had not stopped since the day before. He reached out but stopped himself halfway. Theo flinched at touch when distressed. Instead, he placed his hand on the carpet between them. "You can come to me when you're ready." He waited. Seconds stretched. Minutes. The silence was suffocating. He hated silence. Silence had filled his childhood home like smoke creeping under doors, filling lungs, making everyone choke on unspoken things. Silence had killed his mother long before her heart stopped. He swallowed tightly, trying not to drown in those memories. He looked around the room again at the drawings. Lena had been here. Her presence lingered in the neat folded blanket in the corner, the small sensory tools she had introduced to help Theo regulate the little routine charts she drew with colored markers to help him understand the shape of each day. She had been careful with his world, careful in a way Elliot had never learned to be. He felt a twist in his chest. "I messed up," he whispered, before even realizing he said it aloud. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking the fragile quiet. A news alert flashed across the screen. CEO explodes at housekeeper during executive meeting. Video sparks outrage. Another headline followed. Billionaire power trip raises questions about workplace ethics. Elliot exhaled shakily. His empire was built on efficiency and command, but here outside his son's door, none of that mattered. He could not command a child back to safety. He could not buy trust. He could not fix what he broke with power alone. Another alert chimed, this time from the company's communications director. Elliot pressed the phone to his ear as he stepped outside the room, closing the door silently behind him. The voice on the line was strained. "Sir, it is getting worse. Social media is exploding. Employees are talking. Reporters are calling the lobby demanding a statement, and the board wants an emergency session. We need a narrative. We need something we can use to protect the company until this blows over." Elliot stared at his reflection in the hallway window. His own eyes looked unfamiliar, haunted. "There is no narrative that excuses what I did," he said quietly. The director hesitated, then lowered their voice. "Off the record, sir, some board members believe your recent emotional instability indicates a risk to company performance." Emotional instability. He almost laughed, though nothing about the moment contained humor. It was astonishing how people could label a man unstable the moment he stopped behaving like a machine. Still, the director continued, "They want you to appear composed and unaffected today. Calm, in control. If you show remorse, it could worsen liability." Elliot closed his eyes. "I cannot pretend nothing happened. Sir, with respect, this is not about your personal feelings. This is about the future of Drake Industries and the thousands of employees whose jobs depend on stable leadership." The world shifted, then stretching thin between two forces, duty and humanity, and Elliot felt both tearing at him. His voice came out low. "I will speak with the board." His phone buzzed again, this time an internal message from security. "Someone has been filming unauthorized content around sensitive areas. We are investigating." Elliot frowned but pushed the concern aside. One crisis at a time. He returned to Theo's room, hoping for progress, but the child had not moved. Worse, the trembling had intensified. A small sound escaped the boy, not a word, just a tiny whimper that cracked Elliot's heart. He sank down beside him, ignoring the way the floor chilled his knees. "I am here," he whispered again, voice breaking. "You are safe. You are safe. You are safe." He repeated it like a mantra, like he wished someone had said to him when he was a child crying alone behind locked doors, while his father shouted and his mother fell apart silently. Theo did not lift his head, but his shaking slowed a little. It was something small, but it was hope. Elliot stayed with him until a soft knock came at the bedroom door. The head nanny entered tentatively, holding a tablet. "Sir, I thought you should see this." She hesitated, glancing at Theo with genuine worry. "It is about him and her." Elliot took the tablet. The screen loaded a series of short clips from the penthouse security feeds, showing moments between Theo and Lena, moments he had never witnessed. Lena, guiding his small hand across paper, helping him match colors, whispering small reassurances when the world overwhelmed him, celebrating tiny victories with gentle claps, teaching him how to identify emotions with little flashcards. She drew herself faces, smiling, frowning, crying, laughing. No wonder Theo shut down without her. She had built bridges he never even knew existed. At the end of the compilation, one final clip played. It showed Theo sitting beside Lena during a storm, hands over his ears, overwhelmed by thunder. She had placed her hand near him, palm open, face soft, saying something soundless in the video. And slowly, inch by inch, Theo lowered his hands and placed one in hers. Elliot felt his throat close. When had anyone last reached for him like that? When had he last offered comfort rather than control? He barely noticed the tear falling until it hit the screen. The nanny spoke quietly. "Sir, I know you are his father, but she is special. No one reaches him like she does." Elliot nodded once, unable to speak through the ache. After she left, he sat staring at the frozen image of Theo holding Lena's hand. His voice emerged hoarse. "What have I done?" He rose at last and returned to the hallway, dialing the board chairman. "We meet in 1 hour," he said. "This cannot wait." The chairman replied sharply. "Your behavior has attracted dangerous attention, Elliot. Fix it now or the board will intervene." Elliot hung up. He stood for a moment gazing out at the vast city below. Skyscrapers pierced the clouds like monuments to triumph and failure alike. His reflection hovered in the glass, fractured by faint streaks of rain. For the first time he wondered if everything he had built had been constructed to distract from the things he did not know how to feel. He turned back toward Theo's room, stepping inside one last time before leaving for the board meeting. The child still sat, curled, small and fragile against the wall. Elliot crouched, low voice trembling. "I am going to fix this. I promise. And I am going to bring her back. Because you deserve better. You deserve someone warm and patient and human." He paused, fingers brushing the carpet. "Maybe I do too." Finally, Theo shifted the smallest movement, but a movement nonetheless. Elliot's breath caught. He whispered again. "I am coming back. With her." He rose and left the room, determination replacing the numbness. For years he had believed vulnerability was a liability, but now he understood the deeper truth. His son needed love, not perfection. And maybe, just maybe so did he. The city felt different when Elliot Drake walked into it, without an entourage, without a driver, without the invisible shield of power he normally carried like armor. He stepped out of the black SUV and dismissed his security team, despite their protests, needing to move through the world. As a man, not a billionaire, a father, not a figurehead. Cold wind whipped across the Manhattan streets as he opened the map on his phone, scrolling through the last known address on Lena's employee file. Queens, a world away from marble floors and private elevators. He tightened his coat and began walking, ignoring the sting in his chest each time the memory of Theo's trembling form resurfaced. He passed a group of teenagers, recognizing him instantly, whispering as he passed. "That is the guy from the video. The billionaire who snapped." Another scoffed. "Money really makes monsters." Elliot kept walking, jaw clenched, breath steady. He deserved the judgment, but he did not have time for it. His son needed him. More importantly, his son needed her. He crossed the bridge toward Queens, taking in the shift of scenery, the slower streets, the cracked sidewalks, the corner bodegas with neon signs buzzing like tired insects. He felt strangely exposed, not because he feared for his safety, but because he was finally seeing the world Lena lived in, and it humbled him in ways he had not prepared for. He reached her apartment building and knocked 3 times. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. A neighbor cracked open her door, eyeing him suspiciously until recognition widened her eyes. "Hey, you are that billionaire guy, the one trending for yelling at your maid." "Housekeeper," he corrected automatically. Her brows rose. "She moved out yesterday. Packed after her shift, said she needed extra hours at the diner. The 24-hour one on Jackson Avenue." Then the woman's expression softened slightly. "That girl works like life is chasing her." Elliot swallowed hard. "Thank you." He turned to leave, but she added quietly, "If you hurt her again, I hope the internet eats you alive." He nodded, accepting the blessing and the curse. The diner's neon sign flickered in the distance, like a beacon in the gray morning. Through the window he spotted Lena inside, carrying a tray between booths. Even exhausted, she moved with purpose, the kind of strength born not from privilege but necessity. He stepped inside, and the bell above the door chimed, drawing a few curious glances. People murmured, recognizing him from the scandal. Elliot Drake in a place like this was an anomaly, like a wolf wandering into a pack of strays. But he ignored them. He saw only her. Lena glanced up mid-order and froze for one breath before turning away. She did not want this. Did not want him. Did not want the trouble following him like storm clouds. He approached slowly, stopping at the counter. "Lena." She did not look at him. "We do not talk here. I am working." "Then please talk outside." "I need 3 minutes. My son needs you." That last part made her hand tremble slightly, but she steadied it. She shook her head. Elliot felt desperation sharpen his voice. "He is shutting down. He has not eaten. He drew you all night." Lena closed her eyes as if steadying herself. Her voice emerged soft but firm. "That is not my responsibility anymore." Before he could respond, a drunk man at a nearby booth raised his voice. "Hey, sweetheart, bring me another coffee." Lena moved to comply, but the man extended his hand, grabbing her wrist. "Bring it faster next time. And smile when you do it." The room shifted. Someone lifted a phone to record. Of course they did. Elliot reached the booth in 3 long strides. Release her now. His voice was low, controlled, threaded with a warning no one with sense would ignore. The man smirked. What are you gonna do, rich boy? Buy me a new life? Elliot did not raise his voice. He simply stepped forward with such contained fury that the man's smirk faltered. You will remove your hand from her, or I promise by the time my lawyers finish with you, you will not be able to afford coffee anywhere in this city again. The man released her instantly, grumbling as he backed away. Someone whispered, that is on video. It is going online. Elliot stepped away, ignoring the eyes on him. He turned to Lena. Are you hurt? She pulled her wrist back. Do not do that. Do not act like you have the right. You humiliated me in front of dozens of people. I am not letting you humiliate me again by pretending to be my savior. The room went quiet. Even the fry cook stopped moving. Elliot lowered his voice. I know what I did, and I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for help. For Theo, not for me. That cracked something in her expression, but only slightly. She moved past him, placing a tray on the counter. Elliot followed her outside. Rain had begun to mist the air, coating the street in a thin sheen. She crossed her arms. Say what you came to say. He took a breath. I lost control yesterday. I said things that were cruel and wrong, things I cannot undo. I am ashamed of it. It sounded like the truth, because it was, but Lena had learned never to trust apologies that came from power. Apologies sound nice, she said, but they do not pay rent or erase scars. I am not asking you to come back to work for me. He paused. I am asking you to come back for him. He told her then about the drawings, the shutdown, the trembling, the silence that had lasted through the night. Lena exhaled sharply, a sound between heartbreak and resignation. She cared. He had known she would. That was why this was difficult. She paced once under the awning, looking out at the wet street. Elliot stood still, letting her have space, letting her make her own choice. She finally spoke. I will not be treated the way I was treated again. Not by you. Not by anyone in that penthouse. Elliot nodded fiercely. Understood. And I will not be dragged into your world just to be thrown out the moment it is convenient. Understood. And I am not returning permanently, only temporarily, until he stabilizes. Before he could respond, the diner door swung open and a young girl rushed out, breathless. Sir, the video of you protecting Lena is trending. Elliot stiffened. What video? The girl flashed her phone. The clip of him confronting the drunk man had already gone viral. Comments poured in. Maybe he is not as cold as people think. He actually defended her. But other comments questioned motives, hinted at scandal, stirred the storm again. Lena glanced at the screen, and anger tightened her expression. This is what your world does. It turns everything into spectacle. Elliot muttered. This was not my doing. Maybe not, but your presence creates collateral damage. She stepped away, as if distancing herself from both him and the chaos he carried. Elliot's shoulders slumped slightly. His voice emerged rough. I cannot fix what people record, but I can try to fix what I broke. For him. For you. A long moment hung between them, heavy with unresolved hurt. Lena finally exhaled. I will come for one day. One. After that we evaluate. Relief crashed over him so visibly she almost stepped back. Thank you. But she raised a hand, stopping him from saying more. This is not forgiveness. Not even close. This is about a child who trusts me, nothing else. He nodded. Understood. She turned back toward the diner. He watched her go, feeling the air shift around him, sensing the beginning of something he did not yet know how to name. But the moment she touched the door handle, she said without looking at him, and do not ever raise your voice at me again. Elliot swallowed hard. You have my word. The rain intensified, turning the street into glistening reflections. As she stepped inside, he checked his phone. Messages from the board piled in, warnings, directives, demands, but for the first time he ignored them. For the first time he chose something human over something powerful. As he walked away, he whispered to himself, echoing a truth he was only beginning to understand. I do not know how to fix this, but I will learn. The day Lena agreed to return for a single trial shift began with a strange stillness inside the Drake penthouse, a silence that felt brittle, as though one wrong sound might shatter it. Theo had eaten half a bowl of oatmeal earlier, which the nanny reported as progress, but he still kept mostly to himself, retreating into corners whenever unfamiliar footsteps approached. Elliot waited near the living room window, checking the time every few minutes, watching clouds roll in heavy with the promise of snow. Each passing minute without Lena felt like a thread tightening around his chest, Across the city, Lena left her queen's apartment bundled in a thick coat, Mason calling after her to be safe, worry etched into his voice. She reassured him with a smile, though her own nerves buzzed beneath her composure. She was not returning for Elliot. She repeated that silently over and over. She was returning for Theo, the quiet child who had once placed his small hand in hers, trusting her without words. The subway ride into Manhattan rattled her thoughts with every stop. She rehearsed boundaries, what she would tolerate, what she would not, where she would draw lines thick enough that even a billionaire could not cross. She exited onto the busy street outside Drake Tower, where glass gleamed like ice and the sky reflected itself against steel. Security recognized her but kept their eyes lowered, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of curiosity. The elevator ride felt longer than before, though it moved with the same mechanical precision. When the doors opened onto the 85th floor, Elliot was waiting. He stood straighter than usual, but something in his posture was softer, less certain. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Temporary," she reminded. "Until he stabilizes." "Of course." He stepped aside, letting her pass. Her eyes swept the penthouse, noting the subtle tension in the air, the way staff members pretended not to watch her, the faint traces of a world too wealthy to understand humility. She walked down the hallway toward Theo's room and knocked gently. The door cracked open. Theo peeked out, eyes wide, cautious. The moment he saw her, the stillness inside him softened. He reached out tentatively, touching the sleeve of her coat. Lena knelt, letting her voice warm naturally. "Hey buddy, I missed you too." Theo stepped into her arms, resting his forehead against her shoulder. Elliot watched from the hall, a strange ache, filling him, something like relief, mixed with remorse, mixed with something deeper he could not yet name. For the next hour, Lena guided Theo through sensory activities, letting him choose textures, sounds, and movements. She followed his pace using subtle cues, reminding him he was safe, allowing him to lead. And slowly, almost miraculously, the boy began humming a soft tune under his breath. It was the first sound he had made in 2 days. Elliot felt tears sting but blinked them away. Scenes like this were not meant to be interrupted by his emotions. By early afternoon, snow began falling, the city below transforming into a glittering haze of white. Lena prepared a small snack for Theo while instructing the nanny on ways to maintain the progress. When Theo chose to stay in his room with weighted blankets and picture books, she slipped into the hallway, ready to leave without interacting further. Elliot met her near the main corridor. He looked almost hopeful. "Would you consider staying longer?" She shook her head. "We had a deal. One day." His disappointment flickered across his face, a rare, unguarded moment quickly masked. Before either could speak again, a shrill alarm sounded on the nanny's tablet. "Location alert." Theo's tracker pinged outside the apartment. The nanny gasped. "Impossible." "I only stepped away for a second." Elliot's heart dropped. "Check the cameras." The nanny fumbled with the tablet and pulled up the live feed. The screen showed the penthouse door slightly ajar, snowflakes drifting inside. Theo was gone. Panic detonated through Elliot's body with enough force to erase every thought except one: find him. He sprinted down the hallway, his breath punching out in sharp clouds as he reached the elevator. Lena kept pace beside him, faster than he expected. The elevator was too slow. Elliot shoved through the emergency stairwell door, racing down flights at a reckless speed, taking stairs 3 at a time. Lena followed, breath quick but steady, calling his name between floors. "Elliot, do not run blindly." He could have slipped on ice. He could be afraid. He could be cold. Elliot's mind flooded with images of his son, small, fragile, overwhelmed by the world outside. He had never forgiven himself for not protecting his mother. He would shatter before letting anything happen to his son. They burst onto the lobby level, where security guards scrambled. We saw him head toward the street. He moved fast. Elliot sprinted through the revolving door into the snowy chaos of Manhattan, the cold slicing like knives against his skin. The sidewalk was crowded, bundled commuters, moving around each other like restless shadows, but Elliot scanned every face, every direction, heart crashing against his ribs. There, a small figure darted through falling snow across the street, toward the opposite curb where the city roared alive with taxis and blaring horns. "Theo." Elliot's voice cracked open the sky. Theo stopped only for a breath, head turning, eyes wide with fear, overwhelmed by noise and color and motion. A truck barreled around the corner, its horn blaring. Elliot lunged forward, but the crowd blocked him, bodies pressing against him like a cage. Suddenly, Lena broke free from behind him, sprinting into the street with a speed and certainty Elliot had never seen. She reached Theo just as his foot slipped on ice, pulling him backward into her arms. The truck skidded, splashing slush across the pavement, missing them by seconds. The world seemed to freeze in that single suspended moment. Snow spiraled around them like shaken feathers. Theo clung to Lena, trembling. She whispered softly, head lowered, shielding him with her coat and her entire body. Elliot pushed through the crowd, breathless chest, burning knees, nearly buckling with relief and terror. When he reached them, he fell to his knees in the snow without caring who watched, pressing his forehead to Theo's back. "I am here, buddy. I am here." The paparazzi arrived before the crowd even dispersed, camera flashes bursting like tiny explosions. Someone shouted, "That is the billionaire's kid." Another voice added, "And the housekeeper saved him." Click after click captured the three of them kneeling in the snow like a tableau of desperation and love and consequences. Lena tried to stand, but Theo refused to release, her fingers tangled tightly into her coat. Elliot placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Do not move yet, he needs anchoring." She nodded, understanding. They remained there until the panic inside the boy softened into trembling breaths. Then slowly, carefully, they stood. The cameras followed them like hungry predators. Reporters shouted questions about scandals and safety and responsibility, about the video that had gone viral, about whether Lena had truly quit because of mistreatment. Elliot ignored them all, shielding Theo and Lena with his body as security arrived to escort them through the chaos. Back inside the penthouse, the warmth of the heater hit them instantly, but Lena still shook from adrenaline. Theo clung to her, refusing to let go. A doctor arrived to check him, while Elliot watched silently, hands trembling with residual panic. When the doctor finished, he turned to Elliot. "He is physically fine, emotionally shaken but stable thanks to her." Lena looked away, embarrassed by the intensity of praise. Elliot stepped closer, voice low. "You saved his life." She blinked as if refusing to accept it, but Theo reached for her face, cupping her cheek with his small hand. It was the first fully intentional gesture he had made since the shutdown began. Elliot's breath caught. The doctor packed his bag and left. The nanny slipped out quietly. The penthouse settled into a hush. Elliot finally spoke again, tone different, softer, more certain, not cold but full of the weight of everything that had just happened. "I need you to stay." She met his gaze, eyes still glassy from fear. "This is not my world. I told you that." He stepped closer, careful not to overwhelm her or Theo. "You are the one thing in this world that helps him feel safe, and today you became the thing that saved him." She opened her mouth to protest, but he shook his head. "This is not about me. This is about him." Her breath hitched, partly from the truth, partly from exhaustion. She looked down at Theo, whose fingers clasped hers tightly, refusing to release. She exhaled slowly. "I will stay. For now." Relief washed through Elliot, so strong his knees nearly gave out. He whispered, "Thank you," but the words felt too small for what she had just given them. Outside, reporters continued shouting through the blizzard of snow, and headlines churned across social media. But inside the penthouse, a new truth settled quietly between them. This was no longer just an accident. It was the beginning of a storm none of them could stop, and the start of a bond neither of them could deny. The next morning, the penthouse felt different, not calmer exactly but fuller, as though the walls themselves sensed the shift Lena's presence brought. Snow still fell outside, drifting past the 85th floor windows in soft white curtains, but inside, warmth gathered in small ways in the steam rising from mugs of tea, in the muted footsteps of staff, who moved more quietly than usual, in the subtle vigilance with which everyone watched Theo and Lena as if they were witnessing something sacred. Lena arrived early, bundled in her usual modest coat, her eyes carrying the tiredness of someone who had been awake much of the night, replaying yesterday's near tragedy over and over. The elevator doors opened and her breath hitched as she stepped into the familiar penthouse air that still made her uneasy. She was back, but she would not let herself forget the boundaries she set. She would not allow this place, this man, or the world he lived in to swallow her dignity again. Theo saw her first. He peeked from behind the nanny's skirt, his hair still messy from sleep. The moment he recognized her, he broke into a small run, his arms open in a gesture so uncharacteristic the nanny gasped. Lena dropped to her knees at once, catching him as he pressed his face to her shoulder. "Good morning, buddy," she whispered, stroking his back. "I missed you too." Elliot appeared at the end of the hallway, stopping as if afraid to intrude on something delicate. He had barely slept either, but for the first time in days his shoulders eased slightly. "Thank you for coming this early," he said quietly. Lena straightened but kept one hand on Theo, who clung to her coat. "I told you I would." For him. She made the distinction clear, and Elliot accepted it without argument. Over the next several hours, Lena returned to her routine, though this time it was different. She was not a housekeeper anymore, not truly. She was here for Theo, guiding him through sensory tasks, helping him transition between activities, reading his cues with practiced intuition. Staff watched with subtle awe as the boy who once hid behind doors now followed Lena from room to room, humming softly under his breath. Elliot tried to keep his distance at first, but he found himself drawn to them at every turn, listening to the cadence of Lena's voice, observing how she never forced Theo to speak or perform, how she let him exist without pressure. In her presence, the world seemed less sharp, less cold. But not everyone welcomed her return. In the staff break room, whispers spread quickly. She only got her job back because the billionaire needs a hero. Another voice chimed in, someone like her does not belong here. And finally the whisper that cut deepest I heard, she is sleeping with him. That is why she came back. The words drifted into the hallway just as Lena passed, carrying a stack of picture books to Theo's room. She stopped mid-step, breath catching. Their voices dropped, but not quickly enough. A mix of shame and anger rose beneath her ribs. She wanted to walk away, but the old survival instincts tightened around her like armor. She stepped into the doorway. If you have something to say, she said evenly, say it to me. The room went silent. A young maid flushed, turning away. Another older staff member muttered, we are just saying what everyone else is thinking. Lena held her ground, eyes steady though her heart pounded. I am here for Theo, nothing else. If you have a problem with that, say it plainly, the older woman scoffed. People like you do not end up in penthouses unless they earn it on their back. The slap of the insult vibrated through the room. Before Lena could respond, a voice cut through the tension, sharp enough to freeze every movement. Enough. Elliot stood behind her, jaw, clenched eyes, cold as winter glass. The staff turned pale. He stepped forward, placing himself beside Lena, not in front but beside, as if acknowledging her agency. If I hear one more disrespectful word about her, you will not only lose your job, you will leave this building within the hour. The older woman stammered, Sir, we did not mean. Elliot raised a hand, silencing her. And for the record, he added, voice low and controlled, Miss Hart saved my son's life yesterday. She deserves gratitude, not cruelty. His gaze swept the room until everyone lowered their eyes. Then he turned to Lena. His voice softened. You do not have to tolerate this. Tell me if anyone speaks to you this way again. Her throat tightened, not because of the threat he made for her, but because of the sincerity behind it, something she had not expected from the man who once humiliated her in public. I can handle myself, she replied quietly. He nodded. I know. That is why you are here. After the confrontation, Elliot walked her back to Theo's room. Lena kept silent, but inside a war brewed between gratitude and warning signs, between the warmth of being defended and the fear of letting that warmth fool her again. She focused on Theo, who sat on the carpet, building a tower of wooden blocks. When he saw her, his face lit in a tiny smile, and everything inside Lena softened again. She sat beside him, offering different block shapes, letting him decide which ones he liked. He placed a triangle piece into her palm with a small tap-tap rhythm, a gesture he used only with people he trusted. Elliot lingered in the doorway, watching them. Something about the gentle concentration on her face, the patience in her movements tugged at him, a thread pulling loose from the tight weave of his defenses. After lunch, Lena led Theo to the indoor balcony where soft lights dangled along the railings. Snow fell thickly outside and Theo pressed his palms against the warm glass, amazed. Lena crouched behind him, smiling softly as he traced shapes in the fogged patch of window. Elliot approached quietly, hands in pockets. He used to be afraid of snow, he said. Too many sensory triggers. Loud, cold, too bright. Lena nodded. Today he feels safe enough to explore it. That is progress. Elliot hesitated, then spoke. He is progress because of you. She turned to him carefully, measuring his tone. Do not put that weight on me. He belongs to you. You are his father. Elliot exhaled a shaky breath. I am trying to be. For the first time, I think I want to be. The words hung between them, surprising both of them. Theo drew a heart on the glass. Then he turned and tugged on both their hands, placing them close together on the window pane. Lena froze. Elliot felt his pulse spike. Theo hummed, lightly pleased. He had never done that before. The three of them stood silently watching the snow fall, their hands inches apart, warmth radiating through the cold pane. But peace did not last long. In the late afternoon, Elliot stepped away to take a call from the board, a call filled with accusations, veiled threats, and ultimatums. The scandal was worsening. Stockholders demanded action. Some wanted Lena gone. Others wanted Elliot temporarily removed. He argued, negotiated. But the strain cracked through his voice. When he returned to the living room, he was visibly shaken. Lena noticed but pretended not to. Instead, she focused on gathering Theo's toys. He sat close to her, stacking blocks into neat patterns. Elliot sank onto the couch, rubbing his temples. She hesitated before speaking. "Bad call. Worse than I expected," he muttered. "They want you gone." "Some do." "Some want you gone," he corrected. "Or want you to fire me." His silence was confirmation. Lena inhaled, steadying her voice. "Then fire me. If it keeps your company together, I can leave again." Theo looked up abruptly, eyes wide, distressed by the shift in tone. Elliot shook his head fiercely. "No. I will not sacrifice you to save myself. Not again." She swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. The tension thickened until Theo crawled into her lap, burying his face against her collar. Lena wrapped her arms around him and rocked slightly, humming a soft tune. Elliot watched the pair, his chest tightening. The sight of them together felt like something he had never dared wish for and could never deserve, yet wanted with a depth that unsettled him. Evening settled and the penthouse lights dimmed to a soft glow. Theo eventually fell asleep against Lena's shoulder and she carried him to his bed, adjusting blankets with gentle fingers. Elliot stood at the doorway, watching her unknown emotions storming through him. When she stood, he whispered, "Thank you again, for everything today." She nodded, but her guard remained firm. "I still leave tonight. This was only temporary." He swallowed disappointment. "I know." But deep down he wondered whether temporary could turn into something more, whether her presence was not just healing for Theo but for a man who had not realized how broken he was, until she walked out of his life. She left the room quietly, but as she passed him he noticed a faint tremble in her hands, the toll of the day weighing heavily on her. He wanted to offer comfort but held back, aware that his presence was part of the turmoil. She reached the elevator, pressing the call button. Before the doors opened, Theo's small voice suddenly echoed down the hall. "Stay." The word was soft, almost breathless, but unmistakably spoken. Lena froze. Elliot spun toward his son, stunned. Theo had spoken a full word out loud. For the first time in days. For the first time in perhaps months. Lena turned slowly, eyes filling with emotion. Theo stood clutching the doorframe, hands trembling but eyes desperate. "Stay." She knelt, holding out her arms, and he ran into them. She wrapped him close, heart breaking open. Elliot sank to one knee, overcome. The sound of that single word was enough to unravel him completely. Stay. A plea, a hope, a beginning. Lena met Elliot's gaze over Theo's shoulder, and for the first time there was no anger, no fear, just something delicate forming between them. She whispered into Theo's hair, "I am here, buddy. I am here." The elevator doors slid closed without her inside. Morning came with a thin gold light dripping over the city, but inside the penthouse the air felt unsettled, like something unseen was shifting beneath the surface. Lena arrived early again because Theo had clung to her all night, refusing to sleep unless she promised to return. She had almost said no, almost insisted on boundaries, almost locked her own heart behind the walls she spent years building, but the sound of his small voice whispering "stay" echoed through her dreams until resistance felt cruel. When the elevator opened, she found Elliot already awake, sitting in the living room, hunched forward, elbows on his knees, fingers woven tightly as if holding himself together by force. He looked up when she stepped out. "Good morning," he said softly. "Thank you for coming back." She nodded, offering a cautious smile before heading toward Theo's room, but he spoke again, voice lower. "There is something you should know before you see him." She paused and turned. "What happened?" He hesitated, then handed her his phone. A video was paused on the screen. Her heart gave a small, uneasy flutter. "What is that?" "Watch it," he said quietly. She pressed play. Immediately her stomach dropped. The footage showed her in the penthouse 2 weeks earlier, cradling Theo during a sensory overload, his tiny hands gripping her shirt as she whispered soothingly. But the audio had been replaced with a fake voiceover, implying she manipulated him for attention. The clip cut to her leaving a room, then to Theo reaching for her as though desperate, all edited to create a damaging narrative. A caption splashed across the screen: "Gold digger manipulates autistic child to control billionaire father." Lena's face drained. "Who posted this?" "It is everywhere," Elliot said, voice tight. "Someone leaked internal footage, then edited it to look malicious. My team is trying to track the source." Lena set the phone down, slowly fighting the sting rising in her throat. Every cell in her body recoiled from the humiliation, from the cruelty, from the violation of trust. People online believed it. She could tell from the comments flashing across the screen. Fame hunters, opportunists, armchair psychologists, all dissecting her motives with vicious confidence. She stepped away from the phone, heart pounding. "I should not have come back. I cannot be part of this storm." Elliot stood quickly, panic flickering in his eyes. Wait, please, this is not your fault. Someone is trying to use you to hurt me. She shook her head. This is not about you. This is about me and my life and my reputation. I cannot afford a scandal. People like me do not survive them. He swallowed. I know. Believe me, I know. But you did nothing wrong. They will not care, she whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word. He stepped closer instinctively, forcing himself to speak gently. Let me fix this, please. She stared at him, her breath unsteady. You cannot fix what the entire internet has already decided. Before he could argue, Theo ran into the room at the sound of her voice, blocking out everything else. He tugged on her sleeve, humming anxiously, sensing the tension. Lena crouched, hugging him, and her heartbeat steadied slightly. For Theo she could stay a little longer. For Theo she could endure the weight of strangers' opinions. But only for him. Elliot watched them both, his chest tight as if he had swallowed a storm. They moved to the kitchen for breakfast, trying to brush off the nightmarish start to the day, but the tension never left. Staff whispered more boldly now, glancing at Lena, occasionally then at Elliot, as though speculating about their relationship, about the video, about everything they did not understand. It would have been easier if the judgment were quiet, subtle, but it was not. A young maid muttered to another, if she thinks she can trap a billionaire, she is dumber than she looks. Lena stiffened mid-step, and Elliot caught the flicker of hurt crossing her eyes. He almost snapped back at the maid, but Lena shot him a warning look. Do not. Defending me will only make things worse. Elliot's jaw flexed, but he obeyed. Instead, he guided Theo to the play area, while Lena prepared a sensory activity with weighted items. She tried to focus, but her mind spiraled. Every time she blinked, she saw that hateful caption. Gold digger. Manipulates autistic child. She felt sick. Around noon the nanny rushed in, pale. Sir, you need to see this. She handed Elliot her tablet. A headline blared across the news network homepage. Drake Industries embroiled in scandal. Housekeeper suspected of exploiting child for influence. Beneath it the leaked video played again. Lena felt the floor tilt beneath her. Her hands went cold, lips trembling. Elliot swore under his breath. This is escalating too fast. I need to issue a statement. He grabbed his phone, but before he could dial, an alert chimed loudly. Emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. Mandatory attendance. Lena stepped backward, suddenly, feeling like she could not breathe. They think I did this, she whispered. They think I used your son. Elliot moved toward her, but she flinched away. Do not come closer. I cannot do this right now. His face tightened. Lena, please listen to me. I know you did nothing wrong. The board does not care what you believe, she snapped, her voice rising for the first time. They care about optics and public reaction, and you are the one who brings consequences down on everyone around you. Her words hit him like blows, but he did not retreat. I am trying to protect you. She shook her head, stepping back again. No. You are trying to protect your company. That is not the same thing. Theo sensed the tension and whimpered, curling in on himself. Lena instantly softened, moving to pick him up and soothe him. Elliot watched, helplessly torn between wanting to console her and understanding she would not let him. Not now. 30 minutes later, Elliot left for the board meeting, leaving Lena with the nanny, but moments after he disappeared, the tension thickened. Workers from the tech maintenance team entered the penthouse to inspect the security system, and one of them whispered loudly enough for her to hear. Should have known she was trouble. Women like that always play the victim. Her throat tightened. Another added, or maybe she leaked the video herself. Get sympathy and a payday. Lena put Theo down and walked out of the room, determined to confront them, but before she could speak, the head of building operations arrived. We found something you need to see, he told her. Her stomach dropped. What now? They led her down to the security room, where employees monitored hallway feeds. One technician pointed at a screen showing footage from 3 days earlier. A staff member slipping a USB drive into a restricted port, copying files onto it. The woman on the screen was the older staff member who had insulted Lena in the break room. She had leaked the security footage. She had created the narrative. She had weaponized it to hurt her. Lena's anger simmered, but her exhaustion was deeper. Why would she do this? The technician shrugged. Maybe jealousy. Maybe she hates you. Maybe someone higher up paid her. We do not know yet. But this is proof you did nothing wrong. We will send it to the board immediately. Relief should have washed over her, but instead fear deepened, because she knew exactly how the world worked. Facts did not erase damage. Truth did not erase public judgment. Clearing her name would not stop people from believing what they wanted. She walked back upstairs, trembling with the effort to stay composed. Theo saw her and ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. His small voice trembled. "You okay?" It was barely a whisper, a fragile thread, but it was a full sentence, the longest he had spoken in weeks. Lena's eyes filled instantly. She knelt, pulling him close. "I am okay, buddy." His little arms squeezed her harder, and in that moment, she felt something inside her crack open, something she had kept sealed since childhood. Someone cared about her. Someone needed her. Someone believed her without question. She held him until his breathing steadied. But when she looked up, Elliot stood in the doorway of the penthouse, his face pale, his expression unreadable. The board meeting had ended early, and from the look in his eyes, he had heard everything. He had heard she was innocent. He had heard someone inside his own world had targeted her. And he had heard the whispered sentence from Theo, the one word he thought he might never hear again because of his own mistakes. "You okay?" Elliot's voice broke on the inside, but he swallowed it, holding himself together for the moment before everything in his world cracked open completely. The silence between them was not empty. It pulsed. It vibrated. It held everything Lena feared and everything Elliot had tried for years not to feel. He stepped farther into the room, closing the door behind him as if sealing them away from the noise of the world. Outside the penthouse windows, the storm pressed against the glass-gray clouds, smothering the skyline in a cold haze. Inside, Elliot looked like a man whose entire life had just been shaken loose from its foundation. "I saw the footage," he said quietly. "The real one. The one that proves what happened. I know it was not you." She did not answer. She kept her arms around Theo, who clung tightly, as if she were the only solid thing left in his small world. Elliot's voice frayed. "I am so sorry." Lena closed her eyes. She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt, but wanting was dangerous. Wanting could destroy people like her. "You did not protect me," she whispered. "You protected your reputation. And when the storm hit, you let me stand alone in it." Elliot inhaled sharply as though she had struck him. "The board was waiting," he said. "I had to handle them first." She lifted her gaze, meeting his with steady ache. "And where did that leave me? In a hallway with people calling me a gold digger, a manipulator, a threat, a stain on your empire." His shoulders sagged as if the truth had weight. "I know," she added before he could respond. "I know about the ultimatum." His head jerked up. "What ultimatum?" Lena held his stare. "Someone told me. The board wants me gone, or they want you gone. Either way, I am the problem." "It is not like that." Elliot tried to reach for an explanation, but every word sounded thin even to him. "They think keeping me is risky," she continued, voice trembling now but firm. "They think firing me would calm the investors. They think the world you built is safer without me in it." Elliot moved closer until only a few feet separated them. His voice dropped to a raw whisper. "They are wrong. Lena, you are the only stable thing in this entire place." She shook her head. "I cannot be the thing you use to fix the parts of your life that broke long before I came here." Elliot flinched, because she had accidentally touched the truth buried beneath years of success and solitude. Theo pressed his face into her shoulder, trembling. Lena stroked his back, instinctively humming under her breath. The simple sound steadied him the way nothing else ever could. Elliot watched them with a longing so sharp it almost frightened him. He had built empires, acquired companies, reshaped industries, but he could not build this. He could not buy this. He could only lose it. Lena stood slowly, lifting Theo into her arms. He wrapped himself around her neck, clinging so tightly she felt the shiver in his fingertips. "I should go," she whispered. "For his sake, he should not see us fight." Elliot blocked her path without meaning to, desperation flickering across his features. "Please do not leave." "Not yet." Her breath caught. "Elliot, this is temporary." That was the deal. He looked at her as if the word temporary were a knife. "I know, but I cannot let temporary be the end of this. Of us." She stiffened. "There is no us. You do not get to say that. Not after everything." His jaw tightened, but his eyes softened with something she had never seen in him. Vulnerability. "The board had me cornered during the meeting," he said. "They gave me a choice. Fire you, distance myself publicly, blame you for the scandal, or," what she asked quietly, "or step down." He exhaled a bitter breath. "Remove myself as CEO temporarily. Let investors believe I am the weakness." Lena swallowed. "And what did you do?" Elliot looked down as though ashamed to meet her eyes. "I walked out without agreeing to either option." "That does not fix anything," she said. "It buys time." "Time for what?" He looked at her with an intensity that rooted her to the floor. "Time to decide who I am going to be. For my son, and for myself." She almost faltered. almost let emotion slip through the cracks in her armor. But then she saw the flood of headlines in her mind, the strangers calling her things. She was not the threat of losing her job, her home, her future. Elliot stepped closer, lowering his voice. Lena, they can take my position, they can take my board seat, they can take everything I built, but they cannot take you. She shook her head fiercely. Do not say things like that. They are reckless. They make promises people like you cannot keep. I can keep this one. No, you cannot. Because even if you choose me, even if you pick me over wealth, over power, over the company today, you will wake tomorrow and regret it. He swallowed hard. Why would you think that? Because, she whispered, voice breaking, because I am not the kind of woman your world keeps. His expression shattered. Lena did not look away. People like me, she continued, are temporary, replaceable, disposable. His voice cracked. I told you I could hire 10 like you, and I have regretted those words every second since. I know what I said, and I know how wrong I was. She blinked fast, almost too fast. Then why did you say it in the first place? Because I am a coward. Because I built my life on staying untouchable. Because I did not know how to handle someone who saw through me. Someone who looked at me and did not flinch. Someone who did not fear me. Someone who walked away. The rawness in his tone made her chest ache. Theo whimpered, sensing tension. Lena rocked him slowly. Elliot softened his voice at once. I am sorry, buddy. I am not trying to upset her. Lena held Theo closer, then finally said the words she had been avoiding. I cannot be the reason your world collapses, and I cannot be the woman the public hates for something I did not do. Theo started to tremble again, overwhelmed. Lena pressed her forehead gently to his. It is okay, sweetheart. We are okay. Elliot's voice broke in the quiet. Please do not leave us. She shook her head. I have to. Elliot inhaled sharply, then exhaled with a tremor that betrayed how deeply the choice tore him apart. He stepped back, allowing space, because he finally understood. Power could not hold her. Begging would not sway her. Only change would. Lena walked to the elevator, pressing the call button with trembling fingers. Theo clung tighter, refusing to let her go. His face pressed against her neck, small body shaking. But this time she gently disentangled him, whispering reassuring words until he let her place him in Elliot's arms. Theo reached toward her hands, shaking. Stay, he whispered again. The words sliced her open. I cannot, she whispered back. I am sorry. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Elliot held Theo with one arm and met her gaze with the raw pain of a man realizing he was losing the only person capable of healing the wounds he never acknowledged. His voice was barely audible. If they make me choose, I choose you. She stepped into the elevator. Her final words trembled. Then you will lose everything. The doors slid shut, leaving Elliot standing in the hallway holding his son as the weight of the world pressed down on him. And for the first time in his entire life he let it. Queens was quieter at night in the way only working-class neighborhoods could be quiet, a silence patched together by exhaustion and thin walls and people too tired to argue with the darkness. Lena walked the familiar street with her coat pulled tight, her breath visible in fading wisps. Every step felt heavier than the last, though she refused to let herself look back toward the distant skyline where Drake Tower pierced the sky, like a monument to a life she did not belong to. She unlocked her apartment door and slipped inside, closing it softly so she would not wake Mason. The moment she leaned against the door, her knees nearly buckled. She held onto the doorknob, breathing through the ache that rose like a wave. You did the right thing, she whispered to herself. You had to leave. You had to protect him. You had to protect yourself. The words were true, but they did nothing to ease the breaking inside her chest. She set her bag down and walked to the small kitchen filled with the comforting imperfections of her real life, chipped tiles, mismatched cups, the hum of an old refrigerator trying its best with what it had. She sat at the table, placing her palms flat against the cool surface, grounding herself. Mason wandered in, rubbing his eyes sleepy from studying. Sis, you are home late. Is he okay? Theo, she nodded. He is safe. That is what matters. Mason studied her face, then quietly poured her a glass of water, setting it beside her without a word. He had always known when not to ask questions. Lena sipped the water, trying to swallow the tremble in her throat. She looked down at her hands, surprised to find them shaking. She whispered, he asked me to stay. Mason sat across from her, eyes sympathetic and bright. And you left anyway? Yes. Because if I stayed, I would lose myself. I would lose our stability. And he would lose everything he worked for. Mason nodded slowly. But it hurts, huh? She let out a soft, broken laugh. Yes, it hurts. She reached across and squeezed his hand, grateful for him, for their life, for everything that grounded her, when the rest of the world threatened to swallow her whole. After he went back to bed, Lena went to the window overlooking the quiet street lights glowing orange across the snow. She watched her reflection in the glass, a girl too tired to cry, too strong to collapse, and somewhere in the stillness she whispered a truth she had never admitted out loud. I cared for him more than I should have. The knock came softly at first, then again a little louder. Her heart stopped. No, 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 no. She crossed to the door, pulse thundering as she opened it. Elliot stood on the other side, snow in his hairbreadth, unsteady suit jacket damp from the weather. He looked nothing like the controlled billionaire the world feared. He looked like a man undone, a man who had run through a storm just to reach her. His voice cracked as soon as he saw her. Lena. She closed the door halfway, forming a barrier. Elliot, you cannot be here. Please. He stepped forward, gripping the edge of the door as though holding on to the last remaining thing in his world. I had to see you. I had to explain. There is nothing left to explain, she said softly. You made your choice. And I made mine. His throat worked as if swallowing pain. The board meeting ended badly. They want me gone. They want an interim CEO appointed by morning. She exhaled. I am sorry. I truly am. But this is what I was afraid of. This is what your world does. He shook his head. No. This is what I did. Because I kept trying to have both. I kept trying to hold on to the company while reaching for you, and I hurt you in the process. Lena opened the door a little wider but did not let him in. Elliot lowered his gaze, ashamed. I thought I could balance everything. But when I saw you in the hallway earlier holding Theo, comforting him, the only thing I could think was that I had let the two most important people in my life slip away because I was too afraid to choose. Her breath hitched. Elliot, look at me. He lifted his eyes slowly. She held his gaze steady. You cannot sacrifice the life you built for me. That is not love. That is desperation. And I will not let you do it. His voice was raw. I am willing to lose everything if it means not losing you. She felt something crack inside her. Elliot, do you hear yourself? You are talking about throwing away an empire. You are talking about letting people who depend on your leadership suffer, because you want one thing you cannot have. Because you think I am worth more than your future. I do think that, he said without hesitation. And that is why you cannot be in my life, she whispered. The sentence hit him like a blow, and he stumbled back one step. Snowflakes drifted between them, illuminated by the weak streetlight. Elliot swallowed hard, tightening his grip on the doorframe as though anchoring himself. Please. I am begging you. Tell me how to fix this. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to make this right. She shook her head, tears threatening. Some things you do not fix. You face them. You learn from them. You grow. But you do not get them back. He looked shattered, utterly shattered. I hurt you. Yes. I humiliated you. Yes. I failed to protect you. Yes. So how do you still stand there, she whispered. How do you still want me when everything about this past week proves I do not belong in your world? He stepped closer, voice trembling. Because you are the only part of my world that ever felt real. She nearly broke, nearly. But then, she remembered the comments online, the cruel whispers, the edited video, the board's punishment, the risk to her brother's surgery, the fragile life she had built, and the earthquake one man's power could unleash. She wiped a tear and said softly, Elliot, go home. Go take care of your son. He needs you. I need you too, he whispered, not like he does. The truth settled between them, cold and undeniable. Elliot's shoulders sagged, defeated. He stepped back from the doorway, eyes never leaving hers. Snow collected on his lashes, melting into faint trails down his cheeks. He whispered one last sentence, a final quiet reaching. I am not choosing them over you. I am losing both, and it is my fault. Her resolve trembled, but she pushed the door slow and steady, until only a narrow sliver remained, a fragile last goodbye. Goodbye, Elliot. His voice cracked. Goodbye. The door closed gently. Lena pressed her forehead against the wood, trembling as tears finally spilled. Outside, Elliot stood unmoving in the falling snow until his breath grew shallow and his fingers numb. For the first time in his life, he did not fight the breaking inside him. He let it happen. And on the quiet street in Queens, a billionaire and a housekeeper stood separated by a thin wooden door, and the vast distance between love and fear, between what could have been and what was now lost. Morning broke gray and heavy over Manhattan, the kind of sky that mirrored the weight settling in Elliot Drake's chest as he stood alone in the penthouse office overlooking the city he once commanded. The news channels blared relentless commentary clips, looping endlessly, showing his silence, his stress, his failures, his scandal. Analysts debated the future of Drake Industries. Pundits called him unstable, unfit, overwhelmed by personal entanglements with a housekeeper. And then, there was the video. The spliced, malicious piece of digital venom that painted Lena as a manipulator and him as a man too weak to see it. Somewhere in the city, Lena was watching that same coverage, her heart breaking in a different way. Elliot gripped the railing so hard his knuckles whitened. 3 hours until the scheduled press conference. 3 hours to decide between silence, the comfortable billionaire tactic, or truth, the dangerous, unpredictable path. He closed his eyes and let the memory flood him. Lena closing the door, her voice trembling as she said goodbye. Elliot. The snowfall, the cold, the quiet collapse inside him. That was the moment he understood something with startling clarity. He had lied to the world far too long about who he was. And for once in his life, he would not lie again. He pulled out his phone, selecting a video folder labeled Lena and Theo. Short clips saved from the penthouse cameras, moments he had replayed late at night, trying to decipher the feeling that had begun growing long before he recognized it. Lena kneeling to Theo's level, asking gently what he needed. Lena humming to calm him during sensory overload. Lena teaching him to identify emotions with her hands, forming soft shapes in the air. Lena becoming the only steady thing in a boy's fractured world. He whispered to himself, "If the world needs a truth, I will give them mine." Downstairs, the board gathered in the executive conference room, tension thick enough to choke on. Chairwoman Porter adjusted her glasses and said calmly, "Elliot, the company cannot sustain another scandal. We need a clean, decisive statement, one that distances you from the housekeeper and her behavior." The words sliced through him. Her behavior. He felt something inside him lock into place, an axis shifting. No. The room stilled as if no one had heard him correctly. Porter frowned. "Elliot, this is not the moment for pride. It is not pride, it is responsibility." She opened her folder, crisp authority in her posture. "Then you understand the responsibility you hold to shareholders, employees, and clients." He met her gaze unflinching. "For the first time in my life, I understand exactly who I am responsible to, and I will speak accordingly." The board exchanged uneasy glances, but he no longer cared. This was not about business. Not anymore. This was about choosing the man he wanted to be, the man Lena believed he could become, even as she walked away. 2 hours later, millions tuned in as the broadcast lights illuminated the stage of the global press room at Drake Tower. Journalists crowded the aisles, microphones and cameras pointed like spears. Elliot stepped into view, wearing no armor of corporate charisma, no empty smile. He looked raw, human. The murmurs swelled. Some gasped softly. He began without preamble. "Thank you for being here." His voice was steady but carried a tremor of truth beneath it. "I called this conference to address the rumors, the speculation, and especially the video circulated regarding Lena Hart." Camera shutters snapped. Fingers flew across keyboards. He continued, "Lena Hart is not what the internet has called her. She is not a manipulator. She is not a gold digger. She is not a threat to my company or my son. She is the woman who helped my autistic child speak more in 6 months than the best specialists managed in 3 years. She is the woman who showed him compassion, patience, and stability, the only things he truly needed." He paused, swallowing thick emotion, visibly fighting to stay composed. "She is also the woman I humiliated in a moment of anger. I said I could hire 10 like her. Those words were cruel, unfair, and untrue, because the truth is I cannot replace even one." A collective gasp moved through the room. A journalist whispered, "Holy hell. Elliot Drake is apologizing." Elliot let the silence stretch, letting the weight of his admission settle. "I have made mistakes. Professional mistakes. Personal mistakes. And the greatest of them was losing someone who gave my son hope. Someone who reminded me that humanity is not a liability. It is our greatest asset." He looked directly at the cameras, no longer addressing the crowd, but the one person he truly needed. "Lena, if you are watching, I am sorry. Not the kind of sorry that fits in a press release. Not the kind that comes tied to a legal statement. The kind that comes from a man who finally understands the damage he caused. My behavior led to your humiliation. My choices placed you in danger. My silence allowed lies to spread. I failed you, but I am not failing you now." Behind him, a screen lit up with clips never meant for public view, footage of Lena helping Theo smile, climb a small therapy structure, spin in a circle, while laughing, arms wide open like wings. It was not staged. It was raw truth. The emotion rippled across the audience. Elliot's jaw tightened as he fought through the next words. I am resigning from active leadership for the next 90 days, not because the board demanded it, because I need to become a better father and a better man." A whisper of shock tore through the room. Porter's breath hitched. The journalists erupted in chaotic noise. Elliot raised a hand, silencing them. "Drake Industries will not fall without me, but my son might. And so might I if I continue living the way I have." He stepped back from the podium, his chest rising with a breath that felt like exhale after years of holding everything in. The press surged forward, shouting questions, but he walked off stage without answering. Outside, the building crowds watched the live stream on giant screens. Some clapped, some cried. Some simply stood stunned, witnessing a billionaire choose accountability over pride. In a small apartment in Queens, Lena sat frozen on the edge of her couch, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. The live stream ended and the room fell silent. She stared at the blank screen, tears pooling until they spilled warm against her cheeks. Mason stood in the doorway watching her. After a long moment he crossed the room and sat beside her, nudging her shoulder gently. "That man just bared his whole soul for you in front of America." Lena wiped her cheek. "He should not have done that." "Maybe," Mason shrugged. "But he did. And it looked real to me." Her breath trembled. She whispered, "He meant every word." Mason nodded. "So what are you gonna do, sis?" She didn't answer because she did not yet know, but her heart beat differently now, softer, fuller, shaken. And somewhere on the streets of Manhattan, a man who once believed he could replace anyone now understood that some people are singular, irreplaceable, worth every ounce of truth. The rain had returned to Queens by the time Lena found the courage to step downstairs, her heart pounding with a rhythm she could not quiet, no matter how deeply she breathed. She told herself she was only going out for air, only stepping outside to clear her mind, but part of her knew that was not the truth. She opened the lobby door and froze. Elliot Drake was standing exactly where he had stood days earlier, in that same cold, wet street, this time without a coat, without an umbrella, his hair flattened by rain and his suit soaked through until it clung to him like second skin. He did not pace, he did not look around, he simply waited, hands at his sides, shoulders squared against the storm, gaze fixed on the door as if willing her to appear. When he saw her, something in his chest visibly broke and reformed at the same time. His voice came out as a hoarse breath. "Lena." She stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her, the rain instantly cooling her heated face. "Elliot, what are you doing here?" He released a shaky exhale as if he had been holding that breath since the moment he left the press conference. "I came because I wanted to speak with you, but I decided I do not have the right to knock, not yet, not after everything. So, I waited. In case you wanted to see me." She stared at him, stunned by the simplicity of the words, stunned by the humility from a man who once wielded his power like armor. "Elliot, you cannot keep standing in the rain waiting for me." He shook his head, water dripping down his jawline. "I did not come to force you. I came because there are things I need to say, and the last time I spoke to you I was begging without clarity, grasping instead of offering truth. Tonight I will not beg. I will simply be honest." That terrified her more than any plea. The honesty. The vulnerability. She folded her arms instinctively, hugging herself, though the rain soaked her sleeves just as quickly as his. Elliot swallowed hard, steadying his voice. "I was not done, Lena. When you closed that door it felt final, but it was not final to me. Not because I want to control you or keep you in my world or fix what I broke in some selfish attempt to feel better. I am here because I have changed. Because I saw myself through your eyes and I could not keep being that man." The rain softened for a moment, falling in finer mist as if listening. He took one step closer, cautious, reverent. "I spent years convincing myself that emotions were liabilities and attachments were risks. I told myself I did not need anyone. But the truth is, the first day you walked into my home everything began to shift, and I was too blind, too proud to understand it." Lena's lips parted but no words came out. Elliot continued softly. "You were the first person who looked at me with disappointment instead of fear, and it shattered something in me that needed to break. And when you held Theo the way you did, when he trusted you the way he refused to trust anyone else, I realized I had built a world so cold that my own son felt safer with a stranger. You made him feel seen. You made me feel seen." His voice trembled faintly. "Do you understand how rare that is for someone like me?" She blinked against the rain and against the sting in her eyes. "Elliot, I am not finished," he whispered. "When you said I cannot replace even one like her, I meant it. Lena, the past week forced me to face a truth I have never admitted, not to myself and certainly not to the world. I do not want 1,000 employees who fear me. I want one woman who challenges me, one woman who protects my son, one woman who walks away when I deserve it because she knows her worth. I want you." Every time he said you, her heart tightened further. She stepped back slightly overwhelmed, but he did not close the space. He simply let the words settle between them, heavy and unguarded. "You think this is simple," she said, her voice almost breaking. "You think feeling something is enough to erase everything that happened. Do you think I want to return to being the problem, the scandal, the weakness your board uses against you? You think I want to bring that chaos into my brother's life?" He shook his head, water spraying lightly. "No. I think loving someone is never simple. And I think protecting yourself is valid. I know I failed to protect you. I failed to protect Theo. But I am done failing." His voice lowered. "I am ready to build a life not defined by fear, not defined by power, not defined by trauma or headlines. A life defined by choice. And I am choosing you." She felt everything inside her tremble. The rain grew heavier again, forming a curtain of silver around them. Mason pushed open a window upstairs and called down, "Lena, he is still here. Still. In the rain. Maybe let him talk." Lena's cheeks burned, though the rain hid the blush. Mason retreated, giving her a small supportive thumbs up before closing the window. Elliot let out a breath, half laugh, half desperation. "I think your brother might like me more than you do right now." She almost smiled. Almost. Elliot dragged a trembling hand through his soaked hair. "I do not expect forgiveness tonight. I do not expect you to walk back into my life because I finally figured out what matters. I am not asking for anything. I am offering something, myself. The flawed version, the healing version, the version who will never again weaponize his power against you. The version who would rather lose his company than lose the possibility of you." Lena took a slow breath, feeling her chest tighten around the truth she had been afraid to face. She had not stopped caring. She had only learned how to survive without him. That was different. That was not the same as healing. In a voice barely louder than the rain, she whispered, "Elliot, I do not know if I can trust this. I do not know if I can trust you." His expression softened, a heartbreaking mix of acceptance and hope. "Then do not trust me. Not yet. Just trust the man I am trying to become. Trust what you saw today. Trust that this time I am willing to stand in the storm, instead of hiding behind my tower of glass." He exhaled, shaking from cold and emotion. "But let me say one more thing and then I will leave you alone as long as you need." She waited, heart pounding. He looked at her with a depth that went straight through her, breaking down every wall, and whispered words born from a place he had never let anyone touch. "I was not done, Lena. And I am still not done." That was it, the sentence that cracked her wide open. The sentence that echoed through her chest like a forgotten truth. Before she could think, before she could breathe, she stepped toward him, closing the space between them, and pressed her forehead to his rain-chilled chest, her hands gripping his soaked shirt, as if anchoring herself. Elliot sucked in a sharp breath, arms rising slowly, carefully around her, as though she might disappear if he held too tightly. She whispered against him, "I am still angry. I am still hurt. I am still scared." His chin brushed her hair as he answered quietly, "Then let me stand with you in all of it." Her fingers curled into him, trembling. And then finally, she lifted her face and kissed him. The kiss was not gentle. It was not soft. It was every argument, every apology, every sleepless night, every quiet longing, every broken piece trying to heal. Elliot kissed her as though breathing for the first time, clutching her as if every part of him had been waiting for this moment. The rain fell harder, but neither of them moved away. When they finally broke apart, he touched her cheek, his thumb brushing raindrops and tears without knowing which was which. He whispered, Thank you for giving me a chance to try again." She rested her forehead against his and breathed him in rain and warmth and something that felt like home. "We are not fixed," she whispered. "I know. We are just beginning. I know. But for the first time, I want the beginning." And that was enough. They stood in the rain, holding each other for a long time, letting the storm wash away everything that came before, leaving only what mattered. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving behind a washed, clean quiet that settled over Queens like a blessing. Sunlight slipped between the clouds, casting gold across the pavement and through the window of Lena's apartment, where she stood barefoot watching steam rise from a mug of coffee between her hands. It felt strange waking up with something like hope warming her chest, instead of dread or weariness, strange but not unwelcome. She turned when she heard soft footsteps. Elliot stood in the doorway of the small kitchen wearing a simple gray t-shirt and sweatpants Mason had loaned him last night after insisting the billionaire was not leaving the apartment, drenched and shivering. His hair was messy in a way she had never seen, not from stress or chaos, but from sleep, from sharing a night that was not romantic, not intimate but deeply human. He had fallen asleep, sitting upright on the couch, one arm draped protectively over Theo, who had come to find them sometime in the night, curling between them like a small anchor binding the three of them into a fragile circle of warmth. "Good morning," he said quietly, voice still husky with sleep. "Morning." She poured him coffee, the ordinary domestic gesture startlingly intimate. He accepted the mug with a soft thank you, as though receiving something rare and precious. Theo still slept on the couch, clutching the stuffed penguin she had bought him months ago. Elliot followed her gaze, and his expression filled with something tender and aching. "He has never fallen asleep like that with anyone but you." The admission brushed gently across her heart. She exhaled, steadying herself. "We are not rushing anything, Elliot. We talked about that. I know. I am not here as a CEO or a man trying to claim something. I am here because my son feels safe, and because being near you feels right." That was exactly why she needed to be careful. Feelings were not foundations, actions were. Standing in the small, light-filled kitchen, he looked different, softer, not broken but quietly rebuilding. He sipped his coffee and glanced around at the humble apartment with respect, not disdain. "This place is peaceful," he murmured. "Real." She searched his face, expecting irony but found none. "You really mean that?" "Absolutely. My penthouse never felt like home. It felt like a fortress. This feels like a life." She did not know what to say, so she took the safer path. "We need to talk about next steps." His brows lifted. "Next steps as in boundaries. As in figuring out what letting you back into our lives actually looks like." He nodded slowly, accepting. "All right." She perched on the edge of the kitchen counter. "First, you are not my employer anymore. I will not take a paycheck from you for being with Theo." Elliot set his mug down carefully. "Then we will find a structure that honors your autonomy. You would be compensated if you choose to do therapeutic care, but you would not be under me in any chain of command. Partnering, not employing." That was more than she expected. She softened a little. "And if we move forward romantically," there was a flicker of vulnerability across his face, but he held her gaze. "Then we move slowly on your terms. No announcements, no pressure, no expectations, just truth and time." She nodded, absorbing the sincerity. Mason wandered out of the hallway, stretching. When he spotted Elliot, he blinked, then grinned. "Oh good, you are still here. I thought maybe I dreamed the billionaire in our living room." Elliot actually laughed, low, quiet, genuine. "Good morning, Mason." Mason plopped onto a chair. "So are you gonna make breakfast, or is that only a rich people weekend thing?" Lena smacked his shoulder and he dodged her, laughing. Elliot set his mug aside. "As a matter of fact, I can attempt breakfast, though I should warn you my culinary skills are legally classified as a public danger." Mason smirked. "Great, we like danger." Lena rolled her eyes, but the smile on her lips was impossible to hide. Watching Elliot Drake fumble eggs in her kitchen was not a moment she had imagined in any version of her life. Yet here he was cracking eggs too hard, shell bits falling into the bowl while he frowned, like he was debugging a faulty C algorithm. Lena stepped behind him gently, nudging him aside. "Here, you whisk like this." He leaned slightly closer, watching her hands, movements almost reverently. She felt the warmth of him at her back, steady, grounded, not demanding. When she glanced up, she found him watching her with quiet wonder. "What?" he whispered. "Nothing. Just this. This moment. It feels like the beginning of something good." She looked away before her heart betrayed her. After breakfast and laughter and Theo waking to find the two people he trusted most sitting together, Lena agreed to return to the penthouse, but only part-time, only for Theo, and only until they established new routines. The car ride to Manhattan felt surreal, familiar, churning with memories both painful and sweet. When they stepped inside, the penthouse staff paused, their work stunned. Rumors had spread, but none matched the reality of seeing Lena walk beside their CEO, not as an employee but as something impossible to label. A few whispered sharply, but Elliot's frosty stare silenced every dangerous tongue. "She is not your gossip. She is here as family." The room froze. Lena's breath caught. He had chosen that word purposely, carefully. Theo ran to his play therapy room instantly, exploring the soft lights and weighted blankets. Elliot glanced at Lena, as though asking permission, then joined him, gently modeling the methods she had taught him. The billionaire, who once avoided emotional closeness, now kneeled beside his son, tapping colored blocks to practice sequencing. Pride swelled in her chest. Later, they sat on the wide floor-to-ceiling window ledge, Theo drawing quietly between them. Elliot spoke softly. There is something I want to start with you. Only if you want it too. She looked at him cautious. What? A program, a fund, something meaningful, something that uses not money but heart. Your heart, he swallowed. A center for families with autistic children. Accessible, affordable, named after my mother. She blinked stunned. Elliot, you do not need my help for that. Yes, I do, because you are the one who changed everything. You are the one who saw my son. She inhaled slowly, letting the depth of his sincerity settle inside her. I will help if it is a partnership, and if it is about families, not public image. His smile was small but real. That is exactly why I want you. She looked down, flustered. Elliot, professionally he corrected, but his eyes held another truth. Later, when Theo napped in the soft dim sensory room, Elliot and Lena found themselves alone in the kitchen. Sunlight spilled across the marble counters, gentle warm. He reached for a fruit bowl, knocking an apple off the edge, which rolled across the floor. He groaned under his breath. I swear this kitchen is out to embarrass me. She laughed. You embarrass yourself. He smiled, the kind that lifted something deep in her chest. Lena. She stilled. He stepped closer, not invading, not presuming, simply offering presence. I want to be worthy of you, and I am willing to work every day to become that man. She swallowed hard. Elliot, this is still fragile. Yes. And the best things in life usually are. He brushed a strand of her hair behind her ear, fingers trembling just slightly. Then he whispered something so honest she felt her breath catch. You cleaned my home, Lena. You cleaned my heart. Her throat tightened, tears stinging. You cannot say things like that casually. I assure you nothing about that was casual. She pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath her palm. She whispered, we will go slow. We will build this not on chaos but on trust. He covered her hand with his own. I will follow your pace. Always. And in that quiet, sunlit kitchen, with the city humming far below them, the new beginning took shape, not with declarations or grand gestures, but with understanding, patience, and the courage to hope. Spring sunlight spilled across the glass walls of the Drake Autism and Family Support Center, a building that had once been a simple blueprint in Elliot's desk drawer, and was now alive with color and sound. 1 year. One astonishing, impossible year. Lena stood near the entrance, watching families step through the tall doors, parents holding children's hands, teachers guiding small groups, volunteers setting up sensory stations in the courtyard. Every corner of the center glowed with purpose. She had helped design the therapy rooms, choosing calming textures and colors, soft lights, weighted corners, quiet alcoves. She had trained the staff in emotional connection before instruction. She had written the slogan painted near the lobby ceiling: love is structure. Love is patience. Love is possibility. And somewhere in the center of this beautiful year blossoming around her, stood the man who had once shattered her heart, and who had spent every day since rebuilding trust with steady hands. Elliot approached from behind, sliding an arm around her waist, in the gentle, familiar way that told her he never forgot how close he came to losing her. He kissed her temple lightly. You are thinking too hard. I can see it in your shoulders. She smiled, leaning into him. Just thinking about how far we came. He exhaled softly, almost in wonder. 1 year, one miracle at a time. The staff glanced over with warm smiles. No one whispered anymore. No one doubted who she was to him, who he was to her. The world had seen their story unfold in pieces, threads of scandal turning into threads of redemption, until even the harshest voices softened. The media no longer called her a housekeeper, they called her the heart of Drake Industries. Nearby, Theo played with other children, building a sensory-friendly city out of magnetic tiles. He was talking now, not always smoothly but consistently, sweet, steady words. He waved when he saw her. Mama Lena, look. Her breath caught every time. Watching him grow was like watching a flower unfold petal by petal through seasons. Elliot watched too, his chest swelling with pride that softened his features, reshaping the once cold lines of his face into something warmer, more open, more human. He whispered, he never said mama before you. He will say it 1,000 times now, she murmured, because he is safe, and because you worked for it every day. Elliot kissed her hair, his voice thick with emotion. No, because you taught me how to work for it. A coordinator called Elliot's name, asking for him at the podium. The center's dedication ceremony was about to begin. Lena squeezed his hand. Go. They are waiting. He kissed her one more time before stepping onto the stage to a burst of applause. His mother's portrait hung behind him, serene, proud. Elliot cleared his throat, adjusting the microphone. Thank you all for being here. If you know our story, you know this center was born from more than funding or vision. It was born from change. Real change. He paused, gaze drifting to Lena in the crowd. I used to believe power came from control, from shutting feelings out. But my son and the woman I love showed me that true power comes from connection, from listening, from letting yourself be transformed. He gestured to the building around them, all glass and light. This center is not charity. It is not a corporate project. It is an apology turned into action. It is a promise that no child should feel unseen, no parent alone, no diagnosis a sentence. We believe every family deserves hope, and today we open our doors to anyone who needs it. The audience erupted in applause. Reporters scribbled notes. Volunteers wiped tears. Lena's heart swelled until it felt too full for her body. Later, after the ceremony, after shaking dozens of hands, after thanking donors and hugging families, Elliot found her again, pulling her gently into a quiet hallway, lined with framed drawings created by the center's first group of children. Before she could speak, he touched her cheek with reverence. "You made this possible," she whispered back. "We made this possible." He smiled, the same soft, slow smile that had undone her 100 times this year. "I have something to show you. Come." He led her to the auditorium where the center hosted workshops. A modest crowd waited quietly, filling the first few rows. At the center of the stage stood Theo, holding a small stack of index cards, his teacher beside him. Lena froze, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," Elliot whispered. "He asked if he could make a speech for us. For you." Her heart beat wildly. Theo Parker Drake walked to the microphone wearing a little blue vest, his hair neatly brushed, his expression solemn in the way only children earnestly trying their best could be. The room hushed. Theo cleared his throat carefully as he had practiced. "Hi, my name is Theo." He looked down, reading slowly. "This is my speech for my school family day." His teacher squeezed his shoulder, reassuring. Theo continued. "Today I want to talk about my mom and my dad." Lena suddenly could not breathe. Her vision blurred. The audience murmured, touched. Theo pointed toward Lena. "That is my mom, Mama Lena. She helps kids like me. She loves me even when I get overwhelmed. She helps me use my words. She is the bravest person I know. She saved me." Elliot reached for Lena's hand and held it tightly. Theo lifted the next card. "And this is my dad, Daddy Elliot. He is not scary anymore." The audience laughed softly. "He learned how to listen, and he learned how to hug. I like his hugs. He is the best dad." The last card trembled in Theo's hand. "I am happy because I have a family now. Thank you." The applause rose like a wave, warm, bright, endless, filling the room, filling Lena's entire soul. She rushed onto the stage, gathering Theo in her arms, tears falling freely onto his tiny vest. He hugged her back with full, unfiltered trust. Elliot joined them, wrapping both in his arms, his face buried in their hair. It felt like the world paused for them. After the speech, after the photos, after Theo received a sticker for being brave, Elliot walked Lena to the rooftop garden of the center, a place she helped design. The skyline burned gold in the sunset. The garden glowed with soft city light. Birds perched on steel beams. It felt like a sanctuary suspended above the noise. Elliot turned to her hands, trembling slightly the same way they trembled the night he confessed in the rain. "Lena." She looked up, heart racing. He dropped to one knee. A single breath escaped her. "Elliot." He smiled gently. "A year ago I nearly lost you because I did not know how to love. This year I learned. From you, from Theo. From every moment we chose each other, even when it was hard." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a simple ring, elegant, warm, reflecting the glow of the city. "Marry me, Lena Hart. Not because you saved my son, not because you saved my life, but because you are my life." The city lights blurred behind her tears. She sank to her knees in front of him, cupping his face. "Yes. Yes, Elliot." A relieved laugh broke from him as he pulled her into a kiss, deep and full and sure. Theo barreled into them, hugging them both as he cried happily. "Family," he whispered. Family, the word that once shattered Elliot, now healed him. They held each other on the rooftop, framed by the New York skyline, the past behind them, the future wide open, bright, warm, full of possibility. Night settled softly over the penthouse, 1 year after the rooftop proposal, and Elliot Drake moved quietly through the home that no longer echoed with emptiness, but hummed with life. Toys rested in baskets along the walls, children's drawings covered the stainless steel refrigerator, and the faint scent of Lena's vanilla lotion lingered in the hallway, like a promise that she would always return. He paused at a familiar drawer in his study, a drawer he had not opened in months, as if avoiding a ghost of the man he used to be. Tonight he opened it. Inside lay a single wrinkled paper, the original termination notice printed the day he told her, "I can hire 10 like you." He lifted it slowly, smoothing the creases with his fingertips, the way one might touch an artifact from another lifetime. Lena stepped into the doorway wearing one of his shirts, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. "What are you looking at?" she asked, her voice warm with gentle teasing. He turned the paper toward her. "Just the stupidest mistake I ever made." She walked closer, raising a brow. "Hiring 10 like me." He shook his head, pulling her into his arms so naturally it felt as though his body had been created for it. "Replacing one like you." She laughed softly, resting her forehead against his chest. "You say that, but you never actually fired me." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I tried to fire you from my heart too. That did not work either." She smiled, tracing the line of his jaw. "No, it did not." Theo's footsteps pattered across the hall, and he appeared clutching a small blanket, eyes still sleepy. "Daddy, can you tuck me in again?" Elliot scooped him up with ease. "Of course, buddy. Mama Lena coming too?" Theo nodded, reaching a hand toward her. They walked together into the bedroom that had once been Elliot's alone but was now theirs, warm and soft and lived in. After tucking Theo in, they lingered, watching him drift to sleep under the soft glow of the nightlight. Lena whispered, "He feels safe." Elliot's hand brushed hers. "So do I." They returned to the living room where city lights glittered through the panoramic windows, casting steady golden lines across the floor. Lena curled against him on the couch, her head on his shoulder, fingers linked with his. Elliot gazed at her with quiet awe, the kind that came from surviving storms and building something real in their aftermath. "Remember the day you quit?" he murmured. "The way you walked out without looking back." She nodded softly. "I had to. I know. And that is exactly when I realized you were irreplaceable. Not because of what you did for us. Because of who you were, even when I did not deserve you." Lena lifted her face to him, eyes shimmering. "That man, the one who said he could hire 10 like me, he is gone." Elliot brushed a kiss against her forehead. "He died the moment I realized love is not possession. Love is choosing someone every day, even when it scares you. Especially then." She nestled closer, heart glowing with a warmth so steady it felt like home itself. Outside the city pulsed with endless noise, but inside the penthouse time slowed, held suspended by tenderness and truth. He whispered, "You are the one person my money could never buy, and the only person my heart will never replace." She smiled against his lips as they leaned into each other, sealing the quiet promise that had carried them through the hardest year of their lives. And in the tallest tower of a city built on ambition and noise, a billionaire once feared for his solitude finally found what he could not replace, the only love he would protect with every version of himself forward into every tomorrow. Before you go, take a deep breath and sit with this moment, because stories like this one are meant to leave something warm, glowing quietly inside your chest. If you felt even one heartbeat of recognition in Lena's courage, in Elliot's transformation, or in little Theo finding his voice, then you already know why these stories matter. They remind us that healing is possible, that love is not a transaction, and that no one is ever too broken to choose a different path. And now it is your turn to step into the conversation. Tell us where you are watching from. Are you curled up on your couch in Texas listening to the rain? Are you on a late shift break in New York City letting this ending soften a long day? Are you in California, maybe wide awake at 2 in the morning because you could not stop listening? Let us know. Your comments help this community grow and help us find our way to more people who need a little hope in their feed tonight. Also, tell me this: what part of the journey stayed with you the longest? Was it the moment Lena walked away, refusing to be treated as replaceable? Was it the press conference where a billionaire finally learned the meaning of humility? Was it Theo's tiny voice saying "Mama Lena" on Family Day? Or was it the quiet scene in the rain where two people realized they were not done with each other? I want to hear the part that touched you. And if this story made you feel something, even a small spark, consider giving it a like. It helps more than you can imagine. Now let me ask you another question, because you know this channel is all about emotional journeys. Do you believe people can truly change? Have you ever seen someone transform the way Elliot did, not because they were forced to, but because they finally understood what love required? Share your experience. You never know who might read your words and find courage from them. If you loved this emotional undulation style where heartbreak rises into hope again, tell me what kind of story you want next. Do you want another billionaire romance where a powerful man learns gentleness from the one woman he cannot forget? Do you want a small-town, single dad story full of warmth and second chances? Maybe you want a western slow burn with a rancher who carries more ghosts than cattle. Or maybe a mafia romance with a dangerous protector whose heart only softens for one girl who should have run but did not. Drop your ideas in the comments. Your inspiration becomes our next story. And if you want to support the channel, the easiest way is simply to stay a part of our community. Subscribe for more long-form stories that feel like movies for your heart. When you subscribe, you are telling the algorithm that these emotional journeys matter and that there is space on this platform for love stories that heal instead of hurt. Finally, I want to leave you with one thought. In a world that often tells us we are replaceable, that another person can do our job, fill our role, take our place, remember this truth. You are not replaceable in the lives you touch with kindness. You are not replaceable in the hearts you heal with patience. And you are not replaceable to the people who see you for who you really are. Just like Lena, just like Elliot, just like Theo. So wherever you are tonight, I hope you carry that with you. Now, tell me in the comments what scene made you cry and what scene made you believe in love again. And do not forget to tell us your city. The community reads every single one.